Beyonce couldn't get pregnant. Not naturally, not normally. What I do know is this. When Beyonce got on that stage with that fake baby bump.
Blue don't have Beyonce nothing. She's just light-skinned. I always thought it was kind of weird how she did resemble Jay-Z to a certain extent. But no, that girl is starting to look like Cathy. The eyes, the cheekbones, the jawline, the speltness of her thin face.
See, I know you know what happened, Corey.
The internet didn't just flinch, it froze. Because when 50 Cent decided to open his mouth this time, he didn't throw shade. He allegedly dropped a nuclear accusation with a straight face. One sentence, one claim, and suddenly a story. The industry swore was buried deeper than unreleased Jay-Z masters came roaring back into the light. According to 50, Cathy White's daughter isn't just a footnote in hip-hop folklore, she's allegedly Jay-Z's love child. And just like that, the timeline caught fire. This wasn't a random tweet. This wasn't drunk internet fingers. This felt calculated, surgical, like someone finally decided the silence had gone on long enough. The kind of moment that makes publicists choke on their coffee and lawyers start speed dialing. Because if even half of what's being implied is true, this isn't gossip, it's legacy shaking. We're talking secret histories, hidden narratives, and an alleged family connection so explosive it makes royal scandals look like daycare drama. And the wildest part, people weren't shocked that rumors existed, they were shocked 50 Cent said it out loud. Because when 50 speaks, it's never accidental. It's chess, not checkers. And if this bombshell has receipts behind it, the fallout could rewrite hip-hop mythology in real time. So buckle up. Because once the story starts unraveling, there's no pressing pause, only rewind, replay, and disbelief. The moment 50 Cent's name entered the conversation, nobody expected subtlety. This is the same man who treats controversy like cardio. But even by his standards, this one landed differently. Not loud, not chaotic, just specific. And specificity is where rumors stop being jokes and start feeling dangerous. According to the claim now circling the internet like a shark that smells blood, Cathy White's daughter isn't just part of a forgotten chapter, she's allegedly connected to Jay-Z in a way that hip-hop history has never officially acknowledged. Let's rewind, because the story didn't fall out of the sky yesterday. Cathy White's name has floated around industry whispers for years, always quietly, always carefully. The kind of name that never trends but never fully disappears either. She was reportedly linked to Jay-Z during a period of his life fans obsess over, the era before mogul polish, before billionaire branding, before everything felt airbrushed and bulletproof. That alone is enough to spark curiosity. But curiosity isn't scandal. Allegations are. What made this moment explode wasn't the rumor itself, it was who revived it. 50 Cent doesn't randomly resurrect old whispers unless there's a reason. He doesn't play telephone. He drops hints like landmines and watches who steps where. And when he allegedly suggested that Cathy White's daughter could be Jay-Z's love child, it didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like a line crossed on purpose. The internet reacted instantly. Because of course it did. Hip-hop fans are part historians, part detectives, part chaos enthusiasts. Old interviews resurfaced. Ancient blog posts got screenshots. Grainy photos were suddenly treated like museum artifacts. People weren't asking, "Is this true?" They were asking, "Why now?" Because timing in scandals is never accidental. And here's where the sarcasm kicks in. If this were a scripted TV drama, critics would call it unrealistic. A billionaire rap icon, a long-rumored relationship, a mysterious child allegedly hidden in plain sight, and the reveal coming not from a journalist or a lawsuit, but from 50 Cent, a man who thrives on shaking tables just to see who drops their fork. This makes the Kardashians look like they run a silent retreat. According to the way the claim spread, It wasn't presented as evidence, it was presented as inevitability, as if this was something everyone knew but nobody dared to say, with a microphone nearby. And that's what rattled people, not the accusation itself, but the implication that silence had been strategic, that something was being protected, that a narrative had been carefully curated for decades. Jay-Z's public image has always been about control, precision, legacy management. He's not just an artist, he's an institution. And institutions do not like unscheduled chaos, especially the kind that drags personal history into the spotlight without consent. Even the suggestion of a hidden love child doesn't just threaten reputation, it threatens mythology. And hip-hop mythology is treated like scripture by fans. The first reactions split cleanly down the middle. One side laughed it off as classic 50 Cent trolling, a calculated poke designed to stir headlines and trigger defensive reactions. The other side leaned in hard, arguing that 50 doesn't make claims as specific without some kind of confidence. Not proof necessarily, but confidence. And confidence is contagious. What added fuel was the lack of immediate response. No denial, no clarification, no "this is false" statement rushing to save the day. And in the modern internet era, silence isn't neutral, it's interpreted. People read into it, overanalyze it, turn it into content. And the longer that silence stretches, the louder the speculation becomes. Fans started asking uncomfortable questions. If this allegation were completely baseless, wouldn't it be shut down immediately? Why let it breathe? Why let it trend? Why let blogs run with it unchecked? Of course, there are logical explanations: legal strategy, ignoring trolls, refusing to dignify rumors. But logic rarely survives in the comments section. 50 Cent's history with Jay-Z made the situation even messier. This isn't a random outsider stirring drama. This is a peer, a rival, a man who understands the industry's pressure points better than most. When 50 throws a dart, it's usually aimed at something sensitive. And this dart landed right on the line between personal life and public legacy. The tone of the discussion shifted quickly. What started as gossip became analysis. People debated power dynamics. They talked about how fame allows narratives to be buried. They compared it to other moments in music history where children, relationships, or truths only surfaced years later, long after the damage could be controlled. The idea wasn't that this allegation was true, it was that it was plausible. And plausibility is all the internet needs. Meanwhile, Cathy White's name trended without her saying a word. Her daughter's identity became a topic without consent. That's the ugly side of viral allegations. Real people become characters overnight. And once that happens, the story stops belonging to them. What made this part of the saga so unsettling was how calm the delivery felt. There was no screaming headline, no explosive rant. Just a claim floating out into the world like it had been waiting patiently for permission to exist. That's when people realized this wasn't just about shock value. This was about reopening a chapter many assumed was permanently sealed. And just like that, hip-hop's most carefully managed legacy had a crack in it, not confirmed, not proven, but visible enough for everyone to poke. The story didn't need evidence to gain traction. It needed intrigue. And intrigue is currency. This was only the opening act. Because once the internet decides a story is worth digging into, it doesn't stop at the surface. It escalates. It spirals. It drags everyone into the conversation, whether they ask to be there or not. Once the rumor escaped containment, the internet didn't investigate, it performed. This was no longer a whisper passed between hip-hop historians. This was a full-blown cultural spectacle. The kind that turns timelines into courtrooms and comment sections into expert panels staffed entirely by people who once watched a documentary at AM. The allegation took on a life of its own, morphing with every retweet, remix, and reaction video until it barely resembled the sentence that started it. Memes detonated first. That's always the early warning system. One viral image showed 50 Cent standing over a chessboard labeled Jay-Z's legacy, with the caption, "Check, not checkmate, yet." Another had Bianchi's Lemonade album floating in the background like a storm cloud, because the internet never misses a chance to drag symbolism into chaos. Jokes flew fast. but the laughter carried an edge. This wasn't playful trolling anymore. This was curiosity sharpening into obsession. Celebrity reactions didn't come as statements, they came as signals. A like tweet here, a cryptic Instagram story there. A podcast host suddenly saying, "I'm not saying it's true, but I've heard things," which is the verbal equivalent of lighting a match and dropping it behind you. Nobody wanted to own the allegation, but plenty were happy to stand close enough to feel the heat, and then came the pop culture comparisons. People started calling this hip-hop's hidden chapter, stacking it next to other long-rumored industry secrets that only surfaced years later when careers were already cemented. Others compared it to old Hollywood scandals, the kind studios used to bury with money and silence until history dug them up like bones. The implication wasn't proof, it was precedent. And precedent makes rumors feel respectable. 50 Cent, of course, hovered over the entire situation like a chaos architect. He didn't need to keep talking. The damage was already compounding. That's his specialty: drop one line, then let the internet do unpaid overtime. Fans argued over whether this was personal, strategic, or just entertainment. Critics said it was reckless. Supporters said it was honest. Everyone agreed on one thing: once 50 opens a door, he doesn't care who gets pushed through it. The outrage phase matured into think pieces. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Jay-Z, it was about power, silence, and narrative control. People ask why some rumors get crushed instantly while others linger for decades. Why certain artists can curate spotless legacies while others get dragged for far less. The allegation became a lens through which fans examined the entire industry's double standards, and the analogies got wild. Commentators compared it to a sealed Marvel post-credits scene finally being leaked online. Others called it the lost verse of a legendary album, not confirmed, not denied, but endlessly debated. One creator said, "If this were a movie, the studio would sue the theater," and somehow that felt accurate. What really poured gasoline on the fire was the continued silence from the people at the center of the story. No denial, no clarification, no "this is ridiculous" chuckle to wave it away. And in the social media age, silence is treated like a canvas. The internet paints whatever it wants on it. Every hour without a response became its own headline. Still no comment. Fans speculate. Sources stay quiet. Quiet became content. Speculation spiraled outward, dragging in timelines, alleged dates, and supposed connections that had never been meant to be public discourse. Fans started mapping out theories like conspiracy cork boards, drawing lines between old interviews, lyrics, and long-forgotten paparazzi shots. None of it proved anything, but it didn't have to. It just had to feel connected. At the same time, pushback grew louder. Many called the entire conversation irresponsible, pointing out that real people were being discussed like fictional characters. Others argued that repeating unproven claims only fed the rumor machine. The backlash didn't stop the discussion, it only added another layer. Now the debate wasn't just about the allegation. It was about whether talking about it was fair at all. Jay-Z's legacy loomed large over every angle of the conversation. This is a man whose career is taught like a masterclass in evolution from hustler mythology to corporate royalty. And that's why this allegation struck such a nerve. It didn't attack a song or a deal. It poked at the carefully maintained border between the public icon and the private man. And borders are where conflicts always start. Meanwhile, Bianchi's name was dragged into the conversation by association, because the internet has never met a boundary it respected. Suddenly, every lyric was being reinterpreted. Every old interview was being scrutinized. Fair or not, that's how scandals expand. They pull everyone into orbit. The outrage didn't peak with screaming. It peaked with normalization. When people stop reacting and start assuming, that's when a rumor becomes sticky. It doesn't need confirmation anymore, it just needs to exist long enough to feel familiar. And by this point, the allegation had settled into the cultural conversation like an uncomfortable chair nobody wanted to sit in, but nobody removed. This phase ended not with answers, but with anticipation. Everyone knew the next move mattered. A denial could shut it down. A lawsuit could escalate it. More silence could let it fossilize into legend. And legends are far harder to kill than lies. Because once a story like this embeds itself in pop culture, it doesn't disappear. It waits. It resurfaces years later in documentaries, podcasts, and remember when conversations. And as the internet held its breath, one thing was clear: the fallout was no longer about whether the claim was true. When the dust finally stopped flying, what remained wasn't resolution, it was recalibration. That's the phase nobody sees coming. The part where the internet gets bored, but the industry gets serious. Because while timelines move on to the next distraction, executives, lawyers, and brand architects quietly reassess risk. And in this case, the allegation didn't need proof to have impact. It only needed endurance. Jay-Z's public image has always been engineered with surgical precision. Every era curated, every move measured, every silence intentional. That's why this rumor hit differently. It didn't explode and burn out, it lingered. It hovered like smoke in a room that refused to air out. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to make everyone uncomfortable. The immediate consequence wasn't scandal, it was hesitation. Conversations changed tone. Not dramatically, subtly. The kind of shift only insiders notice. When people stop joking and start choosing their words more carefully, you know something landed. Legacy isn't just about what you've done, it's about what people assume you've hidden. And assumptions are harder to manage than headlines. For Jay-Z, the alleged claim didn't rewrite history, it complicated it. Fans didn't suddenly abandon albums. Brands didn't pull partnerships. But a question mark appeared where there used to be a period. And question marks invite speculation. Speculation invites storytelling. And storytelling is the one thing no amount of money can fully control. The irony is brutal. Jay-Z built an empire on transparency narratives, turning personal history into lyrical confessionals, flipping vulnerability into credibility. Yet this rumor thrived precisely because it suggested there might still be a chapter untold. And in a culture obsessed with authenticity, even the idea of omission feels like betrayal. For 50 Cent, the aftermath looked exactly like you'd expect: distance. He didn't follow up with proof. He didn't escalate with receipts. He let the echo do the work. That's how you know the statement served its purpose. The power move wasn't proving anything. It was forcing a conversation nobody wanted to have. And forcing conversations has always been 50's favorite sport. The wider industry took notes, quietly, because this situation became a case study in modern scandal dynamics. Not cancellation, not confirmation, just sustained ambiguity. The kind that never fully resolves, but never fully disappears either. The kind that pops up years later in a docuseries or a podcast titled "The Stories We Never Heard." Public perception adjusted in micro ways. Fans didn't stop admiring Jay-Z, they just stopped assuming they knew everything. And that's a significant shift. Once fans accept that their idols might have blind spots, secrets, or contradictions, the pedestal lowers. Not enough to topple, just enough to humanize. And humanization is dangerous when your brand relies on myth. The conversation around Cathy White's daughter remained the most uncomfortable element of all, because regardless of the allegation's truth, a real person was now permanently linked to a narrative she didn't create. That's the collateral damage of viral speculation. People become plot points without consent. And once the internet assigns you a role, it rarely asks if you want it. This is where the moral weight of the story settled. Not on whether the claim was accurate, but on how easily culture consumes personal lives for entertainment. The story stopped being about Jay-Z versus 50 Cent and became about power imbalance, who gets to control narratives and who gets pulled into them unwillingly. The industry response wasn't punitive, it was protective. Everyone closed ranks. Nobody confirmed, nobody denied. The message was clear: starve the story and hope it withers. And for the most part, it did. Trending cycles moved on. New scandals replaced old ones. But like all unresolved rumors, this one didn't die. It archived itself. Because unresolved stories don't vanish, they wait. They resurface when anniversaries hit, when rivals speak, when memoirs drop, when documentaries need drama. This allegation became a footnote that refuses to stay at the bottom of the page. And that's the real consequence here. Not exposure, not humiliation, permanence. The idea that no matter how controlled a legacy is, One unverified claim can attach itself forever. Like a shadow you don't see until the light changes, Jay-Z remains untouchable in many ways. His career, his influence, his status, none of that evaporated. But the illusion of total control cracked just enough to remind everyone that even the most carefully constructed legends are vulnerable to rumor, especially when those rumors come from someone who understands exactly where to aim. As for 50 Cent, he walked away exactly as he always does, untouched, amused, and already mentally onto the next move. Because for him, this wasn't about truth or lies. It was about disruption, about reminding everyone that silence can be interrupted at any time. And that's where this chapter closes. Not with answers, not with proof, but with a lingering discomfort that refuses to fade. Now, if you're still here, congratulations, you just sat through one of the messiest, most uncomfortable hip-hop conversations the internet refuses to resolve. And if your eyebrows are still raised, your group chat is already buzzing, or you're thinking, there's no way this ends here, then don't just stare at the screen like you accidentally overheard something in an elevator. Smash that like button like it owes you money and tried to duck you, because every like tells the algorithm, yes, I enjoy my scandals layered, my rumors loud, and my silence suspicious. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think 50 Cent was trolling for chaos? Or did he just crack open a story the industry has been sitting on for years? No fence sitting. This comment section is where theories are born, alliances are formed, and friendships are tested. And if you're new here, don't just lurk like a label exec pretending they didn't see the headline. Hit subscribe, because this channel doesn't do fairy tales, PR cleanups, or no comment energy. We break down the stories nobody wants to touch, the rumors nobody wants to confirm, and the silence that always speaks the loudest. Turn on notifications, because if you think this was wild, just wait until the next name gets pulled into the spotlight. Hip-hop history has long memory, loose ends, and a habit of resurfacing when you least expect it. Here, we don't rush to verdicts, we expose the patterns. We don't chase rumors, we analyze why they won't die. And we definitely don't believe silence is accidental, because in this game, what's not said is usually the loudest part of the story. This is truth tattle, where whispers become headlines, legends get questioned, and unfinished stories never stay buried.